Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, and this is an overview of my 10-step SAT study plan. This is going to work no matter when you are taking the SAT. It's a great way to just organize your prep and make sure you're doing things in a smart way. In each of the videos in this playlist, I will go into much more detail about each of those 10 steps. Specifically, we'll talk about the goals you want to accomplish during that step, the specific tasks that you want to check off as you're working through that step, and the things you want to prioritize as you're working through practice questions for that particular step. This is great if you are studying on your own using free resources like YouTube or some prep books. It's also great if you are getting tutored and you just want some structure to it. Or if you are a tutor yourself, feel free to steal this plan. I definitely think it's really useful. It's what I do with my own students, so it'll be really, really helpful. The main theme here is that we are going to divide and conquer. There are a lot of different topics and rules and formulas and strategies that we need for the SAT. We can't just do it all at once. So if your plan was to just dive into a bunch of practice tests and see how it goes, that is a terrible plan. We need to split it up. We need to tackle one thing at a time. And we have to make sure that before we move on to the next topic, we have conquered the one that we're working on. So this is a very big, important theme here and why we have 10 different steps so that we can spread out the stuff we need to learn. So let's take a look at what those steps are going to entail. This is a table of contents for our 10 steps. First, we're going to start with an overview of the strategies, learning how this test works and the different ways we want to answer the questions. Then we will move on to essential memorization, the most important topics for reading and math. We need to have this stuff down in order to have a fighting chance on the exam. We will take our first practice test in step 3, and hopefully we'll do well, but not really going to have high expectations there. But it's a great way to start practicing the things we've learned. We will, of course, have things that we still need to learn to continue to improve. So we're going to do a little bit of if X, then Y thinking. This is about making good reflexes and habits as we see different types of questions and things on the exam. We're also going to branch out into other topics, more obscure topics beyond the essential memorization ones that we started with in step 2. Then by then, hopefully, we've got enough to take our second practice test, and this is where we want to start really seeing score improvement. So we really want to make sure that we have done steps 1 through 5 thoroughly so that we are ready for step 6. Of course, there are still going to be things that we want to work on, so we're going to make sure we master the middle grouping of questions, those medium difficulty ones. We're also going to need to make smart sacrifices on some of the hard ones so that we are maximizing our score, and after we've done that, it is time for our third and final practice test before the real exam. Of course, we want this one to count too and feel as close to the real thing as possible, but we also want to save time to go back, revisit old topics, refresh our memory on things, so that way that week before the SAT, we are nice and calm and totally prepared, and we aren't forgetting anything that we spent a lot of time studying earlier. So what is the timeline for this 10-step plan? Well, generally, I would say you're looking at about 1 week per step, but I do think you can condense that a little bit. My general advice is that you should save anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks is when you should start preparing for your SAT. So whenever your SAT date is, go back 8 to 12 weeks. That's when you should start studying with step 1. And it can be condensed. It's not like you have to spend the exact same amount of time on each step, but we do want to be thorough with it. We want to make sure we're actually doing the tasks in the step before we move on to the next one. Now, if you have a less amount of time, if you only have, let's say, a month, 4 weeks, don't try to condense all 10 steps into those 4 weeks. It's not going to work. You're just going to rush through them. You can't just watch 10 videos and just be like, yeah, I got it. You got to actually do the work. So I would recommend, instead of trying to do all 10, really just focus on making sure you do 1 through 6 really well. That's going to get you to 2 practice tests. If you only have 2 weeks or even less, really just steps 1 through 3. Do a little bit of memorization and some strategies and just take a practice test so you know what to expect. But honestly, the SAT is not the kind of test that you can cram for, so you really need to spread it out. 10 weeks is our target, a little bit less, you're fine, and just keep moving at a brisk pace through these steps, practicing a little bit every single day. And we want to make sure we're emphasizing quality over quantity. Some people, they want to do all the practice tests, they want to do all the question bank, thousands of questions. That's how I'm going to improve my score. It doesn't work that way. If we're not thinking about new ways to answer those questions, if we're not changing our habits, not changing our strategies, we're not going to change our score. So we have to make sure we are making a conscious effort to put the stuff that we learn in each step into practice when we take a practice test or just work on practice questions. So don't feel like you just got to do a million things. It's better to do a few things really well than a million things just for the sake of getting them done. So regardless, try to plan this out so that that last practice test, whatever it is going to happen about a week before your exam. You don't really want to be taking a full SAT very close to your real SAT because that's mentally taxing and you need to spread it out and you need to save a little time to review. As we go through each of these steps, I will be much more specific in each individual video about what you need to do. I will talk about specific resources. The description for each video will list specific things to go through. But generally speaking, we're going to stick to these things. We're going to use my channel, obviously, because I think it is the best. So we're going to use the Settele Tutoring YouTube channel. I've got lots of resources and we'll always link to the right ones there. You can also become a paid member of the channel to get access to even more questions that I wrote, but there are some other free alternatives as well. We're definitely going to use the free Blue Book app for our practice tests. That is probably the best resource the College Board has released, and it is the only place where you really want to be taking practice tests. I have videos that explain why that is, but the most important thing as you're doing this prep on your own is that you don't spoil the practice tests. So you got to be careful what you do. If you do need more questions beyond the practice test, you can use the College Board's Question Bank for additional practice. Again, just make sure you're using that right. It is possible that if you don't do it right, you will spoil the practice test. So make sure you watch my video on the Question Bank and how to use it appropriately. Beyond that, you can go to Khan Academy, other resources like it. Basically, Khan Academy I like because it's not going to spoil the practice test and it is kind of sponsored by the College Board in certain ways. So it's pretty official, but they're not going to go into detail about all the topics and all the strategies that you need. So it's not going to be enough by itself. That's why my channel is at the top of that list. But again, if you are using other channels, if you are using other resources, be really careful every time they show you practice questions. Find out where that practice comes from, because a lot of times what they're doing is they're just putting the practice test questions up on the screen and spoiling those practice tests. So look at the description, look at the title, see what the tutor is saying, make sure you know where that question is coming from. It's really important that we protect those practice tests. So the next video in this playlist is just going to be step 1. That's where everyone should start. So make sure you watch that and accomplish the tasks in that video before you move on to step 2. You should also make sure you subscribe to the Settele Tutoring channel so that you don't miss out on new lessons that I release, but also so that you have quick and easy access to the rest of this playlist, the rest of the steps that you're going to do as part of your process. You can check out the homepage of my YouTube channel as well. You can check out my website. There's some great resources there. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. If you're excited about this, if you think this is going to help you, give me a like and a subscribe as well. It definitely helps me out. Once again, I'm Mike Settele. Remember, when it comes to your scores, don't settle for less, Settele for more, and I will see you in step 1. Thanks for watching.